Welcome back to the MMASucka podcast. I'm your host, Fraser Crone, and we've got some show ahead of us today. This is going to be, on paper, a shorter show today. I want to recap UFC Vancouver, UFC Fight Night de Ridder versus Allen, UFC Fight Night 262, or UFC on ESPN Plus 120, whatever you want to call it. I want to review the UFC card that went down this past weekend from Vancouver. For what should have been a fairly, on paper, a fairly good card, in my opinion, played out. I thought it was a good card. I thought it was an entertaining card. There was fights up and down the card that were really quite entertaining. But why this card sticks out for me is for all of the wrong reasons. So I'm going to get into talk about them. I want to talk about points. I want to talk about low blows. I want to talk about referee mess ups, and I want to talk about consistency. But first, the main event. Brendan Allen defeats Reinier de Ridder TKO in, is it the fourth? Yeah, I think it's technically the fourth round. 5 minutes after the fourth round, Reinier de Ridder quits on his stool. He's removed from the fight by his corner team. Either he makes that decision or his corner team make that decision. He is removed from the fight. And the reason for his removal from the fight is, simply put, he had nothing left to give for 5 minutes. Nothing left to give. And we have to consider this is Reinier de Ridder's fifth UFC fight, fourth fight within a 365-day period, within a year, and fourth fight this year. Now, he's a big guy. We saw footage. Now, I don't know obviously how accurate that footage is, but he said that he weighed, I think 100 kilos. 100 kilos. So that's around 220 pounds. He had to weigh in at 185, which is 83 kilos. Now, I can't believe, and that was in fight week, I can't believe that to be true, but he is a big guy. He cuts a lot of weight. And maybe this time he just got it wrong. Maybe this time the weight cut was just wrong. He didn't have anything left in the tank. Well, he clearly had nothing left in the tank. But that does surprise me, because we've seen Reinier de Ridder before go 5 rounds. We saw it in his last fight against Robert Whittaker, where in a fight where he was rocked in that fight, he went 5 rounds. He's been scheduled for 5 rounds before. He's gone 5 rounds before when he was the one heavyweight champion. But I just have to ask the question, and I put on Twitter, was something wrong with Reinier de Ridder? Did he have I think it might have been a bad weight cut for him. My exact tweet was, I haven't seen anything official, but I wonder if Reinier de Ridder was injured going into this one. Either that, or he butchered his weight cut and didn't have it late in the fight. It's not a good look either way. And the reason I don't think it's a good look is because many people are calling him Reinier de Quitter. He's retired before. His last fight for one, I'm just having a look at his record here, against Anthony Macklin. He retired in the 3rd round this time. I just question whether Reinier de Ridder has it up here. Now, I've seen the quote from his coach, and I'll try and find it and read a little bit out for you. Because interestingly, he says that the coach takes full responsibility for pulling out Reinier de Ridder. He shares a little bit of sort of context. Last night didn't go as we hoped. After a very strong start in the 1st round, things quickly started fading, and we couldn't really recover from the shots in and after the 2nd round. I made the call to stop the fight after the 4th round. I take full responsibility for that decision, and it was the right call to make for me in that moment. It's not a decision I ever wanted to make, but I guess sometimes you have to. So now he's saying that Reinier de Ridder didn't quit. It was him, the coach, that Coach Harum, that had sort of taken the choice out of Reinier de Ridder's hands. My job is to coach, but also look out for my fighter's health. I've been with Reinier for basically his whole career and saw too many signs that made me step in. If I didn't do anything, he would have continued the fight. Rather than risk unnecessary damage, I decided to call it a day and go home as healthy as possible, live to fight another day. Now, I don't mind that. I think that's a very strong call by the coach. Like he said, he's been in there with Reinier de Ridder for most of his career. And I think the difficulty is that why people were so surprised about the way that the fight was going is because of how well Reinier de Ridder did in that first round. If we take a look at the first round stats, Reinier de Ridder held Brendan Allen in sort of controlled Brendan Allen for 4 minutes of that first round, and he had a body triangle for long periods of that first round. Did that just gas his legs out? He outlanded Brendan Allen 40-6 on total strikes, 3-2 on significant strikes. And then the second round, and then the third round, and the fourth round, Brendan Allen really took over. Obviously, he gave the first round to de Ridder, and that's the only round that I scored to de Ridder. But what I did say, and a note that I took, is that de Ridder is a good bully. He's good when things are going well. He acts well as the hammer. But when he's the nail, when things aren't going his way, he begins to crumble. And I put after round 3, even if he'd won, he won round 1, he lost round 2 and round 3. Even if he'd won round 4 and round 5, Reinier de Ridder would never. And it's brilliant to say this in hindsight, and I wish I could timestamp when I took the note of this what I'm about to say. But Reinier de Ridder would have never beaten Khamzat Chimaev, because if Brendan Allen did that to Reinier de Ridder, made him essentially quit. Can you imagine what Khamzat Chimaev would do? Could you imagine what Fluffy Hernandez would have done if that fight would have stayed on? For me, there are 2 big takeaways from this fight. 3 big takeaways. Brendan Allen is good. He's very good. But for me, it's difficult because Brendan Allen has got 2 losses to 2 guys in the division that I think would beat him again if they're rematched. And the worst thing for Brendan Allen is that those losses are recent losses. Nasruddin Imavov beat him via unanimous decision in September of 2024, and Fluffy Hernandez beat him this year in February. I think, was it the co-main event of Cejudo versus Song Yadong? It was the co-main event. He beat him over 3 rounds. Yes, he rebounded with a win against Marvin Vettori. Yes, he's now beaten Reinier de Ridder on fairly short notice. But for me, Imavov and Hernandez are still better fighters than him. It's that simple. I think the biggest loser from this weekend is not Reinier de Ridder, because let's not forget the run that Reinier de Ridder's been on since joining the UFC. He beat Kevin Holland, who is not an easy. Just this year, this is not an easy person to defeat. Kevin Holland, and I'll go on to talk about Kevin in a second. He's not an easy person to beat. He completely shut down the potential prospect that is Bo Nickel, and he's gone on to then beat former champion Robert Whittaker. That is a very good run for just your second, well, your first full year, let's say, in the organisation. The biggest loser for me is Anthony Hernandez, because with a win here and a statement win and let's be honest, he probably would have done a lot of what Brendan Allen did. He may have got a title shot. It isn't to be. The biggest winner, Nasruddin Imavov, without a doubt, now gets the next title shot, and it's great for him. It's just a shame for Fluffy Hernandez, because, as I said, Fluffy probably would have got the next title shot because he would have put on a more impressive performance against Reinier de Ridder than Brendan Allen did, and it would have been a more impressive performance than Imavov put in against Carvajal last month in Paris. Co-main event, Mike Malott defeats Kevin Holland by unanimous decision, and a unanimous decision that was scored 29-28 in favour of proper Mike Malott. Or did he? If there was any consistency in refereeing, if Dan Miragliotta had adhered to the consistency of the day, this would have been a draw. Towards the end of the first round, towards the middle of the first round, Mike Malott hits Kevin Holland with a low blow. not the most terrible one, sort of like cuffing shot. Towards the end, he hits Kevin Holland hard with a low blow. Kevin takes a full 5 minutes. Dan did a fairly good job, I think, in that 5 minutes of informing Kevin Holland, look, you've got time. You've got time. This is how much time you've got. Right. How much time has he got? This is how much time you've got. Constantly telling him how much time he had left, which is fine, which is great. But he doesn't take a point off. And now in the Carl Proper, is it Propelec? Let me just double check the spelling. Yeah, Kyle Prepelec versus Drew Dober fight. Drew Dober low blowed Kyle. First time, point taken. I'm fine with that because it was such a big blow. Again, Prepelec had to take the full 5 minutes, and the point was taken off. I have no problem with that, even though it was the first one of the fight, the first low blow of the fight. And the reason I don't have a problem with that is because of the impact that it had on the fight. This had a massive impact on the fight. Kevin Holland managed to just about make it to the second round. In between rounds, is all that he could talk about was in how much pain he was in. All that Kevin Holland could do, his mind was not on the fight anymore. It was on the pain that he was suffering due to the illegal strike. After the first round, Dan Miragliotta brings in the doctor. He then brings in another doctor, and he says, "Look." And Kevin isn't communicating with the doctors at all. He's literally not communicating. He's not saying anything. And Dan Miragliotta says, "Look, if you can't continue, I'm going to have to disqualify you." Well, I can't continue because I was low blowed. I was on the wrong end of an illegal strike. But you're going to disqualify me for not being able to continue. Illogical. And I'm going to go on. I'm going to skip a few fights, and I'm going to talk about Dan Miragliotta and the night that he had, because, like I said, if a point hadn't been taken earlier on in the fight, it was referee John Cooper in the Drew Dober fight who took a point off Drew Dober for a low blow to Kyle Prepelec, sorry, and then Drew Dober went on to finish the fight. I don't have a problem with that. I think the blow, like I said earlier, was heavy enough and significant enough so that it changed the fight. Are you trying to tell me that Mike Malott low blowing Kevin Holland did not change this fight? Illogical. So whether you think a point should have been taken in the Drew Dober fight or not, be consistent with it. Be consistent with, okay, for big low blows that really affect the fighters, take a point. That's what we're doing. If that happened in the first fight of the night, that's the precedent that's set for the rest of the night. John Cooper, whether you think he was right or not to take a point, he did take a point. And in my opinion, Dan Miragliotta then has to follow that kind of rule of thumb. It's the same with, let's say, fence grabs. You get one warning and then you get a point taken off for a second fence grab in the first fight of the night. In the main event, you still should get one warning and then a point taken off because the precedent's already been set. Now, if let's say John Cooper hadn't taken a point from Drew Dober because it was his first offence, and although it did affect the fight, then you can kind of say, Dan Miragliotta, yeah, okay, it probably should have been, it has affected the fight quite a bit, but I'm not going to take a point. Earlier on in the night, they didn't take a point, and I don't think it's appropriate that I take a point now. That's fine. That's fine. Dan Miragliotta shouldn't have been refereeing that match after he messed up the Carl Nelson Matt Frevola fight. All I'm going to touch on that is that he stopped the fight 3 seconds early, not a second early. He didn't stop it, 4:59. He stopped it 3 seconds early. Now, he denied Kyle Nelson potentially a finish in his home country of Canada. Kyle Nelson, coming off a loss, could have lost that fight in the second round. I think it was, the end of the first round. Could have lost that fight in the second or third round to Matt Frevola. And he was stolen of a finish. What Dan Miragliotta was doing, stopping the fight then, allowing Nelson to kind of almost go and celebrate, and then say, what are you doing? The fight's not over. It baffles me. Because Dan Miragliotta is one of the more experienced referees, and yet he messed up twice. And, it's easy to say, oh, Kevin Holland will have a fight again in a few months. Says who? Kevin Holland, I think it's his second straight loss. It's his third loss this year. He's gone 2-3 this year. For Carl Nelson, who's to say that shot that he landed on Matt Frivola, followed by the follow-up shot, wouldn't have won a 50-grand bonus? Dan Miragliotta has denied Carl Nelson of having the chance to get a 50-grand bonus. Really pissed me off, that one. And I appreciate, refereeing is a hard job. There's a lot of pressure on you. But this is the elite of the elite level. Make it matter. Make it count. Do better. Do better. So that was Dan Miragliotta in the co-main event and in the Matt Frivola fight. I've kind of touched on those two. Ayman Zahabi defeats Marlon Vera by split decision. Zahabi's second straight split decision win, I believe, over respected names. Oh no, he beat Aldo by unanimous decision. But he beats Marlon Vera by split decision in a fight that I thought he'd lost. And it's not, I'm not biased towards any of these guys, but I do think that Marlon Vera is a little bit too relaxed sometimes for his own good. He hurt Zahabi. Instead of really going after him, he almost gave Zahabi enough time to recover, which is not something that we're used to seeing from Marlon Vera. But what you have to consider, I don't know what it is about Marlon Vera at the moment, but he went on a run. I'm just having a look now of getting 3 straight performance of the night bonuses. When he knocked out Frankie Edgar, when he knocked out when he dominated Rob Font, that was a fight of the night. So he got fight of the night against Davey Grant, knocked out Frankie Edgar, got fight of the performance of the night. Fight of the night against Rob Font when he absolutely battered Rob Font. Performance of the night against Dominic Cruz when he battered Dominic Cruz. That was only 3 years ago. What's happened? Because since then he's picked up 1 win. He's 1-4 in his last 5 fights, with the only 1 win coming over Pedro Munoz. He's been, split decision against Corey Sandhagen, unanimous decision in the title fight against Sean O'Malley, unanimous decision against Devison Figueiredo, and now a split decision against Ayman Zahabi. Something's changed in Chito Vera, and he's not old. He's 33, 32, but he needs to start pushing people away again. I was there in 2017 when he knocked out Brad Pickett in his final ever fight. I've watched every single Marlon Vera fight. I'm just looking down the record now. I've watched every single Marlon Vera fight in the UFC. Andre Ewell, great finish. Sean O'Malley, say what you will, he finished Sean O'Malley. Injury or not, he finished Sean O'Malley. I'm wondering whether that beating that he took off Sean O'Malley the second time round has maybe taken a little something out of Chito Vera, because he doesn't look like the same fighter as when on that that impressive 4-fight winning streak where he's high kicking Dominic Cruz and he's battering Frankie Edgar with front kick to the face. I mean, that looks like worlds away from what he showed in Vancouver. Just going to touch on a couple of the other highlights, because this is going to only be sort of like part 1. I'm going to release 2 podcasts this week, this breakdown and then a UFC 321 breakdown as well. Manon Fiorot got back to winning ways in a very impressive fashion. First round finish of Jasmine Jasdavicius. She was pulling Jasdavicius onto that left hand, landed it, and I mean, I know Jasmine protested the finish. Come on. She was flat on her face, just receiving massive blows from Manon Fiorot. And I think this was a massive fight week for Manon Fiorot, because, she's coming off the title loss. The title is up for grabs again next month. She's the logical next contender again, despite only winning 1, because unfortunately for flyweights, there's not a lot of finishes. That's Manon Fiorot's first finish since her second UFC fight in 2021, where she finished Tabitha Ricci. It's a really impressive finish, and it's a really impressive performance by Manon Fiorot. I think she handled herself really well all week. I'm disappointed that it only lasted 1 minute and 14 seconds, because that was one of the fights on the card that I was most looking forward to. I think I said on the preview last week, but it is what it is. These things happen. But yeah, really, really strong performance. Charles Jourdain landed a stunning flying knee and managed to just follow it up with a guillotine choke on Davy Grant. It's a shame for Davy Grant, but Charles Jourdain, he's putting it together now that he's sort of really settling in as a bantamweight. He's putting it together. Impressive performance, second straight performance of the night bonus, second straight guillotine finish. I mean, it's his third guillotine in his last 3 wins. His last 3 wins have all come by guillotine. Have all got a performance of the night bonus. He's got a guillotine against Lando Venata back in 2022. He's got, he's a solid jiu-jitsu guy, and now he's putting the strikes behind it. Charles Jourdain, the flying knee into the guillotine, I thought was really good. And outside of that, I'm going to butcher the spelling, the pronunciation of this, but Belagori, Belgaor, the guy that beat Asmat Bekaev, he looked really good. Obviously, coming from that kickboxing background, I'd love to see a fight with him versus Chris Leroy Duncan. I think that'd be a phenomenal fight. But his takedown defense was solid. Even when he was taken down, he bounced straight back up to his feet. He used the jab as a weapon, which is what I really like to see. He's tall for the division. How tall is he? Yeah, 6'5", 79-inch reach advantage. Just a really, really good, well-rounded performance. Managed to show off a lot of his skills. Like I said, the takedown defense, getting back to his feet, the jab. I think he landed a body kick straight off the bat at one point. It was just vicious. Outlanded Bekov 102 significant strikes to just 24. It's a shame he's slightly older. Again, I say slightly older. He's 33. But I think we put a rocket on his back for 2026. Really, get him out regularly, facing different types of guys. Give him a striker next. Bekov is, he's got that wrestling background. I think. Let me just double check that. I mean, the average is 4.49 takedowns per 15 minutes. Bekov, he's taken down. I mean, get him fun fights next, because I think that he could be a potential big star at 185. He looked really good, and it's the same with Minister Croden in the curtain jerker, making a UFC debut again, though slightly on the older side. I think I did a little bit of research last night. I think there's only 3 fighters under the age of 30 on this card, which it's not fantastic, but it is what it is. It was a really good performance from Croden. I mean, if I was to give out the I would, to be honest, I think I would have given out 4 or 5 post-fight bonuses. I thought Manon Fiorot was unlucky not to get one. Obviously, Charles Jourdain got one. Correlane got one. I think Croden was unlucky not to get one. I thought she was really good. And I thought Belagori, if that's how you say his name, was really good as well. But I think this card showed a lot of what the UFC has to offer in those kind of mid level, in the mid level. This is what I don't think anyone on this card, apart from maybe Manon Fiorot, is going to ever be a UFC champion. I don't see Brendan Allen ever being a UFC champion. With that being said, I think that this showed what the division has to offer, what the UFC has to offer. Like I said, on these mid levels, I thought it was a really good card. A lot of talking points for what was a fairly standard card. Later this week, I will have my UFC 321 preview. I will have a main event breakdown. I will have a co-main event breakdown, and I am interviewing Sammy Jo Luxton, who was signed to the PFL, and I believe she's still very young. I think she's 25 or 26. Has had to retire, supposedly, from professional MMA. I'm speaking to her on Friday. I'll edit that and hopefully get it out at some point next week. But she's got a very, very interesting story, so keep it locked to MMASucka for that. I'll link the website down below and all that good stuff, and I will catch you next time. Thank you for listening.